Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to part 2 of my 3-part series reviewing different aspects of the Sony A7C. In the previous video we covered my general thoughts and the general features of the camera, and in this video we're going to cover photography. So this video is going to be slightly different from my normal videos in that we're taking the Sony A7C out into the field. So I recently took a trip up to the Highlands of Scotland, and more specifically near Fort William. Around there is such beautiful scenery. I thought this would be the perfect kind of environment to test out the Sony A7C for its photography capabilities. And we're going to pass it on to past Arran now to show you some different locations and some of the shots that we got as well. We're up in the Scottish Highlands. This is actually a place called Glen Nevis, which is just near Fort William. We're going to be taking some photos with the A7C. It's going to take you guys along for that ride. The first place we're going to take a picture of is obviously this place right here. We've got this amazing kind of glen. We've got this waterfall right in the background called An Steall. It's one of the most awesome waterfalls in Scotland, I'd say. So we're going to try and get some photos of the waterfall and see if we can make them look really nice, so get some Instagram bangers. So that's where we're starting. Around Fort William there's lots of different places to take really cool photos of, so that's what we're going to be building this video around. But yeah, look at this. Hey guys, it's now day 2. We're at a place called Loch Lochy. So this is a loch just outside Fort William, quite near a place called Bridge. We're out here currently on a little walk just now, but we're going to be going on different walks around here trying to get some cool photos. I've already taken one of this scene behind me, which is kind of awesome, taking it with a wide angle lens. We've also got a little lighthouse up here, so I've taken a photo of that as well. It's a pretty cool spot, so we'll see what we can take photos of today and test out the A7C and its photography capabilities. Alright, so we're now at a different place called the Witch's Pool, and this is just a really cool waterfall, as you can see behind me. So I want to try and get a long exposure shot of this waterfall and see if we can get something that looks pretty cool for Instagram or whatever. So let's have a look and see what we can do. Now day 3, we're currently at the Commando Memorial just behind me here, which is about a mile outside Bridge, and it's a beautiful day for taking photos of Ben Nevis, Moor and the surrounding kind of mountains there. So Ben Nevis is the UK's highest mountain. It's looking fantastic today. The last few days it's been shrouded in clouds and things like that, but today it's looking pretty clear, to be honest, and this is a really good vantage point for taking photos of Ben Nevis. I'm going to snap a few photos using the 50mm on my A7C and see what we can come up with. Going to go to a place called Treig now, so it's a pretty cool spot. It's usually pretty quiet and you can get some really nice photos of like the valley and the reservoir there. So yeah, let's see what we can get. So now at Treig Dam, there's an awesome view behind me, but there's a massive cloud right above us that is basically just blocking the light. So I'm hoping that that'll go away soon and we can get a nice photo of the valley with the sun and everything in it. So we're probably going to go for a little walk first and then come back here, try and get the photo, maybe like a half an hour to an hour. Hopefully we'll be back and we'll have a better view. I just stopped in this awesome little spot for some lunch. Just taking a little picture across this way. It looks really nice. So yeah, this is a really cool spot and we'll see what we can get back at Treig Dam as well. Okay, so it's day 4. We just started travelling back. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, so late morning, and we're just outside Fort William, and it's super quiet at the moment. Like, look at this. Like, there's no wind. Perfect for flying the drone. So I'm gonna get the drone up in the air, and we'll see if we can get some good shots of Fort William in this kind of valley. Alright, probably on our last stop now, so we're in Glen Coe, probably one of the most beautiful spots we've been this whole trip. Yeah, this is Glen Coe. We've just hiked up into the side of the mountain a little bit just to get a good view of the glen. So I've taken a few photos down this way. There's loads of awesome scenery around here, so yeah, so hopefully we've got some good photos out of that. This is probably the last stop of the trip, and we'll probably have a chat about the features, photo features of the A7C and my thoughts on it after you've seen all these samples. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. So now we've seen what we can do with the A7C, let's talk about my experience of using this to capture photos in the last 6 months. Generally, I've really enjoyed this camera for photography, and the first positive I want to talk about is the flexibility of the RAW files. If the photo I take isn't exactly what I wanted straight out of camera, I'm confident that if I get all the settings correct, so you know, white balance, dial in my exposure and all that kind of stuff, then I'm confident I can achieve something that I like the look of in editing. And that's really re-inspired me to take photos with this camera because I'm confident I can get good results with it. And the A7C shares the same sensor as the older A7 III, but while this sounds like a negative, it's really not. The sensor is a really nice sensor, even if it is about 3 years old now. The dynamic range is pretty strong straight out of camera, but I tend to shoot 1 or 2 stops underexposed so that I can maintain those details in the highlights and then bring the shadows up in post. The shadow recovery on this camera on these files is actually really good. It's better than the A7C in my opinion because you can recover those shadows and not actually lose any of the detail and not get a really noisy result. So it's fantastic in terms of the flexibility of the RAW files. If I'm trying to get similar results using my M50, I would probably have to shoot bracketed photos and then work with an HDR workflow, which just kind of slows you down a bit because obviously you'll have to use a tripod to actually capture those photos in the first place so that you're getting the same scene, and then also in editing you'll have to go with that HDR workflow, which just adds a bit of work, whereas with the A7C you can just capture that one photo, manipulate it a bit in post and get the similar results that you would with that HDR workflow from the M50. So going back to that 24 megapixel sensor, I think this is the sweet spot of resolution because it gives you the ability to print these photos out and for them to be nice and sharp, and also to crop in, but you don't have those massive file sizes and you don't sacrifice the low light capabilities as well. So it's a really nice happy medium, I'd say. And the 5-axis in-body image stabilisation, or IBIS, is fantastic in this camera for allowing you to get those handheld shots at low shutter speeds. This allows you to effectively capture motion blur of moving objects in your scene while making sure that the rest of the static scene is in sharp focus and not blurred in any way, which is great. This is something I couldn't do with the M50 because it doesn't have that in-body image stabilisation. You only get the stabilisation within the lenses. Next, one minor but really satisfying part of this camera is the shutter sound. Just listen to this. And from my experience, the autofocus on this camera is fantastic. It nails focus pretty much every time. Bear in mind that I am not using kind of burst shooting at that much at all, so I'm not really going to comment on that, but in my use, which is generally kind of landscapes or street photography, this is extremely good. And the touch to track function is really good because it tracks the object that you touch and it sticks to it. Even if the object's moving, it'll track that along. So if you're trying to maintain focus on a car, for example, that's moving, you can tap that and it will maintain the focus the whole way along, which is great. So that works really well in my opinion, and it's something I use all the time to make sure that the object that I'm shooting is always in focus. And if you're not using autofocus and instead you're maybe using a manual lens, then you have features like focus peaking, which are really useful. I'd say this is on par with the M50. I wouldn't say it's any better or any worse than the M50. It just works kind of just as well. And this is something I use quite frequently to make sure that I've got something in focus if I'm using manual focus at any time. So while there's a lot I like about this camera, there are definitely some negatives and things that I think could be improved upon in maybe a future version of this camera. The first thing is the viewfinder, and I did talk about this in quite a bit of detail in my general thoughts video in part 1, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but the main thing is that because it's quite a low resolution, you can't actually see too many details on the viewfinder. You can use it for framing, it's really good for that, but the details such as being in focus and things like that, you can't really tell using the viewfinder, so you have to use those assistive features if you are manually focusing. Then there's bracketed shooting. I found this easier to pick up on the M50 when I first picked up the camera because I think it's less intuitive on this camera, and this is where the menu shines through in terms of overcomplicating things. It just doesn't feel as easy to get to that feature as it does on the M50 and to use it. And the last thing is that raw image files on this camera are larger than they are on the M50, so I'm putting this as a downside because it costs you more storage, and storage costs money, so that's definitely going to be a negative for me. And one last thing is that the raw files are in ARW format, so this is Sony's version of RAW, and the slight annoyance for me is that you can't preview these in Finder, at least on Mac, so you have to actually import them into Lightroom or another compatible program to actually view the files and sort through them, you know, and look through the ones that you want and the ones you don't want, which is kind of a slight annoyance because I got used to sorting through them in Finder with my Canon M50's files, and that's something I can't do with the A7C. So if your workflow is similar, then that's something to bear in mind as well when using this camera for photography. But to round up this part of the review, my experience with the Sony A7C has been resoundingly positive. Fundamentally, it has re-inspired me to take my camera wherever I go, and with the confidence that I'm going to get some absolute bangers if I take some photos with this camera. But if you want to see some more A7C photos, then follow me on Instagram at AaronPBrown. I'm posting there pretty regularly. But if you want to hear my thoughts on using the A7C for video, which is mainly how I've been using this camera, then make sure you stick around, hit that subscribe button and notification bell to make sure that you don't miss out when part 3 is released. But otherwise, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.